Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Michael and Benjamin's inaugural splitting of the cast. We've decided in a world that is so totally against change that we're going to go against the grain and change everything. Whoa! It's kind of crazy.
Ben, I'm scared.
Yeah, I know. It's okay, Michael. I would hold your hand. Unfortunately, I'm only a digital presence in your life. We've decided to split the podcast, and for part one of the week, we're going to have our weekly roundup, where we take a look at the things that we enjoyed from the week.
Or didn't enjoy,
because we're spiteful human beings that live in a tiny room. So, welcome to our inaugural weekly roundup. Here you go. Listen on.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Tiny Room for episode 49 of Michael and Benjamin's podcast. I'm your co-host Michael, and I am digitally here in the digital Tiny Room with our usual other co-host, who is the other guy. It's called Ben. Hello, Ben.
What up?
That was slightly more rambling than usual.
Yeah, it's all right though. You're entitled to an occasional ramble, Michael. We are the Rambling Man's podcast.
The reason it was rambling, Ben, was because I have become inspired by the nonsensical frivolity of Deadpool.
He is very nonsensical and frivolous. That's his whole thing.
Very frivolous.
Benjamin, it's interesting.
Do you think you could defeat Deadpool in a dancing competition?
No. Definitely not.
Oh, good. Okay. Let's cancel the podcast, though, because that was our topic for this week.
Could Ben take Deadpool? Well, I have been training for months, but I still don't think I'm at the right level.
Everybody knows you've snuck off to Italy to go to ballet conservatory, not art school.
Would you don't tell people? God, give over.
Surprise!
I have a big performance. Michael.
Sorry.
Michael, it's almost like this isn't pre-recorded and would actually matter as if it were live. Oh, Michael.
Oh yeah, because you can just edit this out.
Yeah, it's going to be edited out now. I'm going to have to get rid of it, Michael.
Seat, Ben.
You've
Benjamin.
Yes.
Hilarious banter aside, have you seen the trailer for Deadpool?
I have. Celine Dion, whose heart will go on.
Would you call it a trailer? I suppose it's not a trailer, is it?
It's a gimmick. It's a piece of promotional material.
But a very good one.
Oh, it's excellent. Celine Dion. Fair fucks to Celine Dion. Like, she's just taking the full-on piss out of herself. Like, that's...
Yeah.
Bananas.
I wonder how much they paid Celine Dion.
I don't know. Are her and Ryan Reynolds just best buds? I don't even know.
They are Canadians.
All Canadians are friends.
That's certainly my impression of Canada.
That's what I've got. Everyone just walks around going, hey,
buddy, you want to make a bloody promotional video for my film, buddy, eh?
Hey, pal, they gave me an extra donut down there at the shop there, so what do you say, huh?
I think it will be Tim Hortons.
Tim Hortons. They gave me an extra Hortons down there at Hortons. Gee, they sure are nice down there.
That's one of your least convincing accents, Ben.
Yeah, it's not great. It's not
that
great.
fills me with a certain kind of spiteful joy.
Sounds more like the Midwest, to be honest.
It was a bit Fargo.
Bit Fargo. But then again, sure look, listen, I can't win them all, Michael. Can't win them all.
Ben, I think the only possible negative side effect of this Deadpool situation is every Comic-Con this year is going to be full of men in Deadpool costumes and high heels.
Yeah. I mean,
dancing.
that's really what we're looking at here, isn't it?
And look, I think if they're a good dancer, all power to them.
Yeah, fair fucks. Have at.
Because that definitely wasn't Ryan Reynolds in that costume.
No. God, no. He has, on his Instagram, he has a picture of him and the dancer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a picture on Van City Reynolds, is what it's called. And that's the name of his Instagram. And he has a picture with this guy who he's worked with across the years. That dancer is also a stunt double occasionally. Bizarrely versatile individual.
Are you saying that dance might be a way into stunt doubling?
That sounds more plausible than stunt doubling being a way into dance. That sounds significantly more plausible. But yes, I suppose that's what I'm saying. But yeah, it's nice. I enjoyed it, and then I enjoyed the little banter at the end where she just kind of tells him to fuck off.
Fuck off, Spider-Man.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, fuck off, Spider-Man, which I thought was really good. I thought it was quite funny.
A lot of characters being confused for each other.
There are. Speaking of, have you seen the Teen Titans Go trailer, Michael?
Ben, is this a hypothetical question? Because you remember you just showed it to me like 10 minutes ago.
Do you know
we watched it together, remember?
My mother asked me the other day, Michael, she said, who do you think ruins a premise or a setup the best in all of Ireland? And I knew instantly. I said, Michael Leonard. Michael Leonard just knows how to step on a bit.
Ben, at least, hold on, let's get personal now. At least when I do it, it's on purpose.
Ooh.
Gotcha.
Oh, that was cutting, Michael.
Right in the fields.
That was cutting.
Look, don't attack me, Ben. It's 9 o'clock in the morning here. For some reason, I'm awake on 9 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. I'm a bit sensitive. I'm a bit tetchy.
It was inevitable. 49 episodes. We're bound to hate each other eventually. Bound to hate each other. Eventually, it was unavoidable. But did you see? You did see it. It looks very funny, Michael. It looks very funny. It looks like just about. It looks to be easily the closest in Marvel tone in the DC universe, which I found really interesting.
It's a little comedy film, isn't it?
Well, that's what Teen Titans Go are, Michael. See, Teen Titans originally had an animated series, and I suppose this was the start of the really successful DC animated run. Because generally speaking, Marvel excels at the box office, which is the one you want to excel at, to be fair.
Because that's where all them sweet dollars are at.
Sweet dollar bills are at. And then, unfortunately,
yes,
DC have been left with the animated scraps. But yeah, I don't think they mind. Because they do quite well with their animated stuff. They've had Young Justice. They have their movies where they kind of take a look at their Elseworld series, and they turn all those into animated things, and it's really cool. But
although usually straight to DVD.
It's usually straight to DVD, straight to Blu-ray these days, Michael. All the kids are watching Blu-ray these days.
Straight to digital release.
There we go. And they've just launched their own streaming service.
Death to physical media, Ben!
Yep. Pretty much. They've just lost their own streaming service, so it looks like they're going to start pumping more money into that after the tragic bombing of two other bloody movies. I'd say they're going to start trying to recoup some of those losses. But anyway, one of the really successful early renditions of this animated kind of run is Teen Titans, and that premiered on Cartoon Network in 2003. So a long time ago now. Wow. About 15 years ago now. And it was kind of... yes, as am I getting. And it kind of premiered in this kind of really cool, edgy, animated style. They were trying to capitalize on... Cartoon Network had a late night anime-inspired hour called Toonami. Do you remember Toonami? Mm-hmm. That was their anime kind of branch. And that was doing really well. So they figured they'd start kind of creating content that matched that to try and sell. And it was exceptionally successful. This was when DC executives knew what they were doing and knew how to appeal to an audience. So this was really popular, and it had a nice serious tone, and it was really kid friendly but also really good, and it was great. And then that kind of came to a natural end, as series often do.
4 series, was it 4? 3?
And they got... I think it was... Hang on, I have it here. I don't need to guess. 5 seasons. And it's centered around the kind of Silver Age Titans lineup, which was Starfire, Beast Boy, Cyborg, Robin, and Raven.
The classics.
And this was before we stole Cyborg and stuck him on Justice League because they need a tech character, because it's all digital these days, Michael, and kids are into MP3s.
And Iron Man.
And Iron Man. Yeah, I never thought of it that way. Yeah, they needed an Iron Man. And they didn't handle him well, and they gave him poor CGI, and now we have him. But anyway, after that died its natural kind of death, there was uproar. Because it was really popular, but I think the writers had grown a little tired of the format, which obviously happens, and I think the voice actors had done the same thing over and over again and had a very serious tone. So, to appease to everyone, they kept many of the same actors, and they created kind of an even more anime-inspired Teen Titans Go being a capital thing, and that's a nice...
Go!
That's a nice little throwback to the theme tune of the original series. Teen Titans Go is much sillier. It's aimed far more at children than it is at adults, but it has a lot of in-jokes and kind of meta-humor.
We like meta-humor here,
Ben. We love meta-humor here. And it's been very successful. It's had 4 seasons. And it's so successful that it has its own movie coming out.
4 seasons and a movie.
4 seasons and a movie. Yep. It is very divisive, however, between hardcore Teen Titans original fans and this new brand of thing. But what it's really doing is Teen Titans, the original run, was very much, it had those moments of hyper anime where like the characters would become very cute and kind of chibi.
Oh yeah,
kind of eyes
occasionally,
for
every
moments.
Now and then.
Yeah, and they do all that motif that comes with anime series, and this is just an extension of that with funny humor. And obviously, action doesn't work with tiny miniature cutesy characters, so they've had to.
Well, it can.
It can.
Powerpuff Girls.
Oh, that's true, but it's actually that's an excellent point. It is very like Powerpuff Girls now, and it's kind of silly. And the movie is capitalizing on that. I don't know if you heard the wonderful voice of Will Arnett, but Slade is played by Will Arnett.
Isn't it interesting that they've always called him Slade in the Teen Titans? Is it because they don't want to have the word death in a children's cartoon character name?
I think that is the exact reason that we don't have Deathstroke. Also, Deathstroke sounds like the world's strangest way to autoerotically asphyxiate.
I would say, Ben, that it's the world's most common way to autoerotically asphyxiate. It's essentially the only way, really, isn't it? What happened to old David Carradine there? Oh, you know, the old Deathstroke.
He forgot the Mandarin.
I don't know what that means, but I'm going to leave that with you.
Oh, okay. I won't explain it on the podcast because I've been revealing too much of my character lately anyway. So we'll stay away from that. But it looks very funny, Michael. There's lots of little in-jokes in there and extremely reminiscent of Deadpool. And I think they even have a huge joke where... I don't know if you know this, but Rob Liefeld created Deathstroke.
Ben, I didn't know that. Wait, did he?
Yes. Hang on. Oh, this could get me in trouble. Hang on, we'll do a quick search. But anyway, we're going to continue as if I'm right.
Okay.
And what happened with him is he then left DC and he kind of rebooted the character in DC as Deadpool.
Yeah.
Deadpool in his original iteration is red and black. Deathstroke is black and orange.
Orange. You mean Deathstroke created by Marv Wolfman and George Perez?
Oh, bloody hell, that was embarrassing.
He just stole Deathstroke.
He stole Deathstroke. Deathstroke is famous for using 2 katanas. Deadpool is famous for using 2 katanas. And the color schemes and mercenary suit are almost exactly the same. Deathstroke has a healing factor. He's super agile. His full title is Deathstroke the Terminator. That's his full title, which is quite funny.
But they can't call him the Terminator either because that's a copyrighted name.
Absolutely. And he's become something of a central character in the DC universe. He's a fan favorite in the DC universe, which I find very interesting.
He was played by the great Manu Bennett in Arrow.
In Arrow, no?
Yeah, have you ever seen Manu Bennett give an interview about it? It's just Manu Bennett gives the best interviews.
He's an odd guy. I think you've told me about this before. Where he's
a
just
proper
bananas.
Weirdo. Yeah, he's a proper madman.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
I think he would have been a great Deathstroke in the DCU universe, but I think he might be slightly too short.
He is a bit short. It's now going to be played by Joe Magliano.
I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but yes,
he looks pretty good. Like there's been some promotional material put out. He looks interesting.
He was our choice for Hercules, Ben, almost a year ago.
He was our choice for Hercules. He would suit it. He's a very big, handsome man. It's good. But he was actually voiced by Ron Perlman in the original Teen Titans series, and he was the central antagonist in that one. But anyway, this one takes the piss out of him far more, and it's a nice throwback to the original series because now they're finding Deathstroke, and they want him to be... Sorry, Slade. That's what they're called in that one. And they want him to be their antagonist because Robin wants to be taken seriously. So they're kind of lashing back at all that criticism about it being too soft and sweet. And they're kind of tackling that. It's really cool. Interestingly enough, one of the top questions on Google when you search for Deathstroke is Deathstroke Deadpool's brother?
No, very good.
Which is quite funny because there's a whole bit where Will Arnett argues with the kids in the trailer about not being Deadpool. And I find it really interesting that a DC property just full-on references Deadpool.
Almost a week to the day that Deadpool said, "Oh, you're so dark and edgy. You must be from the DC universe."
Yep. It's
taking shots at each other in the medium of trailers.
But it's interesting to see how you can adapt like different things to different formats and cause division in fan bases and stuff like that because the comics have never been as successful as this series. And the Teen Titans have gone through so many reboots in an attempt to get to that tone that made the original run by Glenn Murakami so successful. But
the
they haven't
original run of Teen Titans
on the TV show.
Ah.
The Teen Titans Cartoon Network show. And they've never managed to encapsulate it quite as well. It's now going to be a CW show as well.
Have you seen the set photos?
They got a lot of backlash for that.
Oh wow!
It looks bad.
Very bad.
To be honest with you, Michael, I think the CW has run its course, but that's just me. And
you're sick of the Arrowverse.
Obviously, the rest of the world does not agree with me, and that's okay. It's still quite popular, and I probably don't know what I'm talking about. But it was very interesting to me to see how different things could be adapted to different mediums, Michael. Speaking of...
what a segue.
Flawless segue. Speaking of, how do you feel about Neil Gaiman?
Look, whatever he wants to get up to in his own time, that's none of my business. I personally don't find men attractive, but I have no problem with people who do.
And that non-judgmental, non-persecutionary attitude is exactly why I do a podcast with you, Michael. It's just lovely
Thanks, Ben.
and refreshing to meet a man of your caliber. But seriously, when you're not making wit or repartee with me on the internet, how do you feel about Neil Gaiman?
Ben, I would say I'm quite the Neil Gaiman fan.
Yes,
I'm currently holding in my hand here Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman,
which is very good.
It's very good. Very good. Ben, to segue very slightly from this segue.
Sure.
I would love for someone to write an Irish mythology book of the caliber that Neil Gaiman achieved with that.
Irish mythology never gets a decent look in.
Well, Ben, if you pop into Eason, our main bookseller in Ireland here, you will find lots of books on Irish mythology and anthologies and collections and everything. It's just I don't know if any of them are any good.
Do you know what the main problem with a lot of Celtic mythology is? I think in more modern renditions is the bloody
the IRA.
Partially that, but
Celtic mysticism.
Celtic myth. There we go. Celtic. No, you go back. You were halfway there. Celtic mysticism. When WB8 started his whole Celtic revival thing. Mm-hmm. Around the turn of the 20th century, they started to look back towards our mythological cycles. So we have our Ulster, Leinster, Munster and Connacht cycles of mythology. And they started to bloody rewrite them in an attempt to make them more nationalistic and more prideful. And it comes across as so stilted and stale now.
Wasn't it Cuchulainn who said Brits out up the Ra?
I think he says that about 6 times to a fairy.
A fairy, a traditional Irish fairy.
A traditional Irish fairy, as opposed to a derogatory term for a homosexual. Yes.
Although
he may have said Brits out up the rat to various homosexual men as well. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know how progressive he was.
I'll have to look up the appendix in my edition of Nationalistic Celtic Fables.
What were we saying before?
But yeah, so Neil Gaiman does a real good job of repackaging Norse mythology. He's awfully good at it. And I think, how would you describe his writing style, Michael?
Good.
Good. Okay, that was very helpful. Yeah. He's very philosophical in how he tells stories. He considers himself a storyteller more than a writer, Michael.
Ben, I wouldn't have gone there in 100 years.
No, I know you wouldn't. But that's why I'm here.
Okay. That's why you have a degree. Oh, I have a degree.
That's what I say.
I have a degree in literature.
That's what I say to fairies and homosexuals.
Ben,
you've
gone too far now.
Two are
as usual, you've gone too far.
Too far, Ben. Anyway, he is very he likes to leave ambiguity in a lot of his stories. I think this is especially true of his short story work. He enjoys a hanging meaning or a lack of specificity in what happens, and because of that, his stories take on this very kind of dreamlike quality quite often, and we're unsure of exactly what they mean. And I think one of the really interesting examples of that is one of the short stories from his short collection Fragile Things, which is How to Talk to Girls at Parties. Have you ever read it, Michael?
Ben, I thought I hadn't, but I'm sitting here looking at Fragile Things, and I have read it cover to cover. So yes, I clearly have.
You clearly have. It's an unusual short story in that it's almost poetic. He was experimenting with forms. He loves an old poetic form. He likes to try and work them into his stuff. It's very interesting. It's about two guys that go to a party. Vic and I think it's N. Is it N?
Vic and Bob.
Vic and Bob, thank you. No, wait,
Vic
that's
and
Reeves and Mortimer.
Yes.
You and your Reeves and Mortimer. I love Reeves and Mortimer. You love an L. Reeves and Mortimer. You're a chancer, Michael Leonard. You're a chancer. Anyway, it follows.
Don't my full name.
Sorry.
No, I'm joking.
Sorry, we've done it before, I think. It's all right. Nobody listens to the podcast. It's grand.
No one who doesn't already know my full name. Anyway.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so it follows two guys who are going to a party. One is very good with women. That's Vic. And the other, our main narrator, is not.
That's like me and you.
That's like me and you. Yes, I often go to parties and I'm very successful with women, and you are not.
Well, I mean, that's provably untrue.
So, see how I turned that around there?
Yeah, you did. You turned that around on me.
Swish.
What such witty banter. It's that witty repartee that makes you good at talking to girls at parties.
Anyway, this particular party with girls is a little bit different. They get the wrong address. They are going to a house party. Man. So this particular party is not really the same party that they're trying to go to. Remember,
in what sense, Ben?
So they come to a house. They meet a lot of kind of beautiful model-like women.
Oh,
and because it's the 70s in England, they think they're from America. They think they're from America, and they're kind of like Andy Warhol style models, and it's all kind of avant-garde and new age. And the girls keep referring to themselves as tourists. Now, what Vic and
Bob,
who we're going to call Bob in this particular case, don't realize is that they're the only men in the house. And obviously, Vic, who's the ladies' man, goes off, finds a woman almost immediately, and goes off. And then Mick has or Bob.
Very good.
Whoops.
A Freudian slip.
Bob has shit. Bob has a series of encounters with various women in the house. Anyway, as it turns out, spoiler alert on a short story that came out in 2003. That is free on the internet, by the way, if you want to read it on Neil Gaiman's official site. The girls are aliens from another planet. Aliens. And they're here to procreate. Classic alien banter. And he has a series of conversations with these women, each one representing a different kind of artistic style. One is a muse, one is an outcast, one is a blah, 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 blah. And then...
I'm not familiar with the blah, 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 blah.
It's an unusual Greek elidaic form from the turn of the 1st century. It's quite nice, but you have to speak a really, really orthodox version of Greek to get it. The blah, blah, blah. But anyway, what happens is Vic eventually comes back down in a completely kind of shook and shocked state, and he drags...
sex cocoon.
Yes, he drags the other guy out of the house. And you never really find out what the women are specifically in the short story, but luckily, it was later adapted into a graphic novel by Fabio Moon and Gabriel Ba. They worked with Neil Gaiman to bring it to screen. So they made a graphic novel out of it in 2013. Was when it was originally a party thing, and it's called How to Talk to Girls at Parties. It's very interesting. It's quite a beautifully, as I've said before, I'm a huge fan of Fabio Moon and Gabriel Ba.
Moon and
Ba, yeah. Which is actually quite a nice name for the two of them. So yes. And they turned it into a graphic novel, and it's very interesting in that it's exactly the text of the short story that's been adapted to graphic novel format. So there's no change. If you've read the graphic novel, you've read the short story. And it's very beautiful, and it's very interesting, and each one gets their own personality. And it actually helps to illustrate a lot more of the esoteric qualities that Neil Gaiman puts into the story. Because the story leaves you kind of reeling, and you're trying to figure out... It's very much like an acid trip or something like that. And I think those 70 undertones are very strongly implied that it might just be one long acid trip. But this helps to make it a much more coherent story. And then, of course, Michael, when everyone realized that it was successful, what happened? Hollywood came a-calling.
Good old Hollywood.
And we rebooted to a traditional rom-com, which is really unusual. It's not a rom-com, it's more just a romance, set in 1980s England in the punk era, which is actually a much better tone for it.
I think 70s England?
Oh, is it 70s? 70s again? I thought it
I'd
was.
say if it's punk, it's 70s.
Yeah,
surely.
it's probably the 70s. You're probably right, but yeah. So they go back to the 70s, and but this time he's a punk, and it's the whole punk era and all the unrest with English society and the upper class and blah blah. And it's interesting to look at outsiders from that perspective. What's missing, it would seem, from the trailer, and I haven't seen the movie itself. It didn't do very well, I don't think.
Is it out?
I think so. Came out in 2017, I think.
The movie?
Yeah, hang on, let me check. It's got all its reviews. It's got all its reviews. I just think it was a bit of a flop, so it didn't stick around. But it's missing that existential horror from the short story and the graphic novel. You're a fan of cosmic horror. It is vastly implied that the reason that Vic is so disturbed is because he's witnessed a cosmic entity in the bedroom with this woman.
No, it's not out yet.
Is it not? But all the reviews are in, and it's all very confusing. Maybe it's not out yet.
It came out. It was released. It has world premiere at Cannes last year.
Okay.
So all the critics saw it then.
And lambasted.
But it's due for wide release this week.
Oh, okay. There we go. That's awfully well timed.
Accidentally done something incredibly topical.
Yay, topical. But I think what's interesting from the trailer, at least, is that existential element is put aside for a more youth and fervor seizes the day, carpe diem, only they look to the children, they're our future kind of motif. And it's very much a young man from England who feels very constrained by his society, who's paired with a young alien who feels very constricted by hers, and so on and so forth. You're describing
the movie now.
Yes, I think that's the tone that we're going to take. There are some horror elements, but it seems to be body horror more than cosmic horror. The aliens grow strange hands out of latex suits here and there.
Who hasn't done that?
They can unhinge their jaws. And what it becomes is this girl realizes that she wants to live free as a human. It's a very humanist angle. They talk about how humanists may have fucked up the planet, but at least we have choice. At least we're free. We like to run around. We like to do this, blah, blah, blah. So it takes
it's a lot like the movie. It's a lot like the movie Live Free or Die Hard.
Yes, very similar to that without Bruce Willis. And then I think what the fundamental difference between these two things is there's no reconciliation in the short story or the graphic novel. They witness this cosmic horror, and Vic is made to realize that he's very, very insignificant in this particular universe. In the movie, it would seem to more or less affirm humanity's place as top of the food chain, which, you know, Michael, I bloody hate.
But Ben, this is speculation on your part. You haven't
This is
actually seen it
speculation, but I'd be willing
Were you one of those crickets at Cannes last year?
I was, and I lambasted it based on the humanist angle. You know, I'm not a fan. No, I wasn't. I'd never do that for a living, Michael.
I always say lambasted.
Do you?
Yeah, which of us is wrong?
Let us know down below in the comments, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, listeners.
I'm
let us
Ben.
know how to pronounce that word.
Ben loves an L lambasting, and Mick loves an L lambasting. So let us know down below. Do you lambaste or lambast? Lambaste or lambast? That may be the name of this week's episode. Moving on from there, I just found it interesting that you could adapt something so differently. But then again, Hollywood often steps on art.
Oh. But Hollywood is art.
It's a form of art.
Popular art.
They usually
Populist art.
They usually. Ooh. There you go.
I don't have anything to follow it up, Ben.
That's a shame. But that was nice anyway.